All right. Hi, everyone. Let's see if everything is okay. Hopefully, there is no delay. There is nothing wrong here. It's the first time I'm using StreamYards all by myself, but that should be all right. I'm going to share my screen and do a quick... Actually, what I'm going to do is check real fast on YouTube if we are actually live. If someone would say something quickly. Yeah, I can see there we are actually live, so that's great. My name is Aleksander. I am the secretary on the board of the Blockchain Game Alliance, and today we're having a fireside chat with me and Gustav from MakerDAO. But before we begin, I am going to say a few words about the Blockchain Game Alliance in this presentation, for those of you who have no idea what it is we're doing, and then we're going to jump right into this chat where Gustav is waiting. So screen 2, DeFi X Gaming. All right, so as I said, my name is Aleksander, and this is DeFi X Gaming, a fireside chat with Gustav and Aleksander. And for those of you who have no idea where or what actually the Blockchain Game Alliance is about, we are an organization that's committed to promoting the blockchain game industry. We want to spread awareness about blockchain technology and also encourage adoption by highlighting and foster new ways of communication between various parties. We are very interested in diversity for women, especially in the industry, because the blockchain game industry is so young, and the same goes for the gaming industry. Not especially young, but not too many women in the industry in general. We're an open forum for individuals who are interested in getting in touch with us. So feel free to join us on our Discord channel. We do a lot of different things. Our focus is networking. We do research and reporting. We look at various things within the blockchain industry. And we also represent a significant amount of the blockchain game companies right now. So if you are not a member yet and interested in getting in touch and getting involved with the blockchain game industry, feel free to reach out to us directly. Some of the recent activities that we have done is we just had a really massive amount of events lately about blockchain, the blockchain gaming industry, or women in the blockchain gaming industry. We had an interview with Sam Engelbart about investing in the blockchain industry, and also an interview with Frederick Chesnais, sorry for butchering that name, who is the CEO of Atari. Some of our main sponsors are AMD, Ubisoft, Matic, MakerDAO, who we are having aboard today, Algorand, Animoca Brands, and also Chromaway. And I can introduce a new sponsor as well. So Galaxy Interactive have recently joined. And that's about it for the brief introduction. I will bring on board Gustav right now, and then we can get started with this quick panel. So let's see if we can do stop sharing and then bring him on board. There.
Hey guys, Aleksander.
Hi Gustav, great to have you with us. I've given this very quick introduction about. I haven't said too much about myself yet, but you can begin. So tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and also MakerDAO.
Yeah. So my name is Gustav. I'm Danish, and I manage the European business development for Maker. I also have done a lot of our projects in Asia, especially last year. In regards to like gaming and like the decentralized finance space, I'm also one of the people at Maker who's really been pushing for like more initiatives with games. So Maker is basically one of the market leaders within the sector called decentralized finance. Providing financial services without centralized intermediaries. We believe that the way that you capture value in games is something which can be very closely connected with decentralized finance. We also are aiming to really become, like the de facto altcoin, you could say, to the games. So a lot of the games, they would have their own native currencies, but having something that is stable, reliable, that can be used as a unit of account, and will be compatible in a lot of the games that you might be interested in. that's really like the goal for us initially with some of the stuff we're doing in gaming, and I'm sure we'll dive into that a little bit later as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think you touched upon that briefly. So I'll introduce myself briefly too. So my name is Aleksander. I am the COO and co-founder of Sky Mavis, which is a game technology focused studio. We make Axie Infinity and also recently introduced a new sidechain to Ethereum, which is called Ronin. We're working with MakerDAO for quite some time. And one of the things that you mentioned is, of course, having a stable currency inside the game, which we'll get back to later, but definitely very interesting for games. And I think this is something that's very needed for people to actually interact with some of these blockchain games. Like early on, we've seen Ether, for example, being the exchange of accounts for many games, in Axie too. But people generally don't want to price things in a currency that's going up and down quite widely. So for me, at least, I can say initially that pricing things in the stable currency is almost like 100% needed. But where the value capture is, whether that is from a token or something else that's tied to the product, that's something else entirely. So you touched upon it briefly, and also, by the way, welcome to Rico Zuniga and Medard Mandane in the chat. Good to have you guys here. If there's anyone else, just say hi or questions. We'll take that kind of as we go. You mentioned it briefly about MakerDAO's interest in gaming, but could you expand a little bit about that? So why do you think DAI is such a good fit for games specifically?
Yeah. So, I mean, first off, we've been working a lot in like verticals. We tried to analyze and figure out what would be like some of the industries where we really believe DAI can make a big difference. Throughout the end of 2018 and also largely in 2019, we had been focused a lot on the decentralized finance sector. So we worked with everyone. You know, DAI really became like the de facto stablecoin and like currency within these decentralized finance protocols. And we see a lot of the same potential in gaming. So apart from us having quite a few gamers on the team and just believing in that as an industry in general, we believe that like the blockchain aspects to games is something that really goes in and solves some active problems and you know can actually enhance the user experience because you can capture value much better. So we have this like massive belief in you know what blockchain games will be in the future. So for us, it just makes a lot of sense to come in and you know really try to work with this industry from like its infancy. You know, we have really just only started to see, you know, in like the last like 6 to 9 months, like a lot of games starting to like release, you know, the initial versions, the initial products, and you know the same with you guys, Aleksander. You know, what you guys have managed to, you know, push through the last like 9 months has been like so many new things, right? So we know that there's so much stuff happening all the time. So now is really the moment to get in for us. And then, you know, the way to really see it is that a lot of these games, you know, they need an unbiased currency, right? We need, you know, equal and fair access the same way that we provide it to financial services. We want to do the same with the games. We also want it to be that, you know, if you have DAI in your wallet, you would automatically be able to go between the games without having to, you know, worry about, you know, acquiring every single native currency. But you know, being able to use DAI is kind of like the common denominator between a lot of these games, and you know, thereby thereby really incentivizing onboarding. I think my camera just broke off now, actually.
Yeah, you are in a you look really good right now on my screen. Maybe we can you can do a quick restart or turn off your camera. All right, so Gustav is taking a small break while he is fixing his camera. So let's see if I can send him a new link. Is he back? Yes, he is back and in much better shape, seemingly. So that's good to have you back. So I want to touch a little bit on kind of what you said in terms of decentralized currency. From Axie, of course, we looked at other stable coins too, but there is some security, of course, in having something that's backed in a decentralized manner that is verifiable. So we were very, very interested in that from the beginning. And we felt like for that reason, DAI was a good kind of starting point. And we obviously did something together for quite some time now. But for those who necessarily they are hard using DAI. But how would you like, your goal obviously is to ensure that people are using DAI inside their ecosystems, but how do you, for example, motivate a company to use DAI, and what kind of partners are you working with right now?
Yeah, so I mean, I definitely, so first off, like one of the things that we also really want, like when you look at like which stablecoin you should choose, right? We also just want to make sure that people feel that there's like an ecosystem around what they're doing, right? So we are very actively going in and working directly with the games. We are hosting tournaments. We're doing different in-game happenings. Depending on the game itself, we're really open to drafting a lot of different things. So earlier this year in March, we launched like the DAI or like the Maker Gaming Initiative, where we're giving out bounties to games that want to do different things. So since then, we've gone live with I think it's 4 or 5 more games, and we right now have ongoing discussions with around 5 games that has committed to doing different things, and a couple of tournament platforms as well. We recently announced with BattleDAO as well that we're going to be hosting a variety of different tournaments there, including Axie tournaments. We also are in touch with some of the other of these like tournament platforms. So we're not only trying to make it something that will happen within like blockchain games, but like our way of targeting traditional games right now would be via these tournament platforms, because it is a little bit ambitious to try to have DAI inside a big traditional title at the moment. I mean, outside of the gaming space, we of course work with tons of different partners, and we recently hit our like global integration number 700. So we have more than 700 different projects, platforms, applications, dApps that uses DAI all around the world now, and we're really looking to scale up games as well. So we are around 16 games we're live with at the moment.
Yeah, I think like working with games, especially now that we see games kind of or blockchain games taking the next step and making it more user friendly, trying to onboard traditional users. It's a really good opportunity to get kind of get eyes on DAI from that reason. So I think there's a really good synergy here, because these early startups in terms of blockchain games, they're interested in kind of rewarding their players, the early adopters. And DAI or MakerDAO is interested in also getting adoption from people who necessarily aren't too technical, but can understand, so to kind of get the word out about DAI as a stable currency. So for us, obviously, it's a really great fit, and I can definitely understand why you guys are also interested in other games, and of course traditional games. I have that on my list of questions too. So I think traditional games is kind of course, the ideal thing for a company like yours. But that is kind of a harder nut to crack, and especially also I think for like blockchain games right now, we are still in such a small niche where we can't really compete. And I guess, is that something you guys are feeling too from these traditional games, that they aren't really incentivized to use DAI as of yet, or do you have another feeling?
I mean, it's really difficult, right? Because with traditional games, they already have built all the infrastructure to how they're dealing with payments and value transfer at the moment, right? So like with blockchain games, it's very easy because the nature of working with Ethereum, for example, or even if you work on like another blockchain, if you already have kind of like this concept of needing a wallet to interact with the game, it's very easy to make rewards that goes into that wallet, right? But like working with traditional games, you would need to onboard the entire user base into something. So like the way that we really see it is that we are playing the long run, right? We don't. I mean, I don't know what the gaming space is going to look like in 10 years, right? But we definitely have a very strong belief that some of these blockchain games that we are working with at the moment, that they will hopefully make it big. And at that point, that's when you really start to onboard users, right? So we're really just playing the long game here. We of course have also had conversations with some of the like traditional games, or like platforms that interact with traditional games. And as soon as it needs to become like an integral part of the game, that's when it really becomes difficult, right? Also because there's a lot of restrictions on like the App Store, the Google Play Store, on Steam and so on. Like all of these things are already built and like functioning for them now. So it's difficult to incentivize them to do something else.
Yeah, I definitely understand that. And I can see that we have an interesting question from Khan CG in the chat, which by the way, welcome to Tyler, the Ninja Meb, and also Jean Sebastian to the chat. But he's asking if XDAI will play a role in gaming. And I think kind of expanding on that is more, basically everyone is talking about scaling. How do you guys envision like DAI on layer 2s or sidechains? And this is also interesting for us in Axie, where we just introduced, as I said, Ronin, our sidechain to Ethereum. So I think more in general, like how do you guys envision the DAI scaling in terms of gaming? Is that something you guys are interested in supporting? And XDAI is, I guess, one part of that.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, like exactly what you said. I mean, XDAI as like a concept, I think is something that's super interesting for games. Necessarily XDAI specifically. I mean, if a game would want to use it, they could, right? But we have seen the tendency that we've seen in the past has been that games that kind of like group up together and then they join some of these layer 2 solutions like Matic that is still focusing on games, but also Loom, who has then now pivoted away from games. So we have definitely seen these layer 2 solutions. And another thing which is this is like a personal opinion, right? Is that like a lot of these games, they don't necessarily need to achieve decentralization in the same way that you need us to achieve on our protocol level, for example. So using a more centralized, like a less decentralized layer 2 solution for scaling is something that I believe makes a lot of sense for the games. Because right now, I mean, it is completely unfeasible to run a game on Ethereum, right? Because every single time you need to do a transaction, it can cost you up like a couple of bucks. So even if you're doing these like play to earn that we have seen, for example, Axie coming out with, right? I mean, right now they would all get eaten up in gas costs. So I'm definitely like a very, very strong believer in minimizing these things, these issues for the games. And a game, in my opinion, is also kind of centralized already, right? So you can decentralize and make the assets immutable and like put them on the blockchain and make them freely tradable. But achieving decentralization inside a game is very difficult because you have a team that's sitting and building and updating it, and they need to be able to do this without interference. So I believe a lot in layer 2 scaling solutions, and I also think what Axie recently announced with their own sidechain, focusing on gaming as well, coming out of Sky Mavis is something that I also think is a great idea. It's a really good concept.
Yeah, I think of course, like having been in the space for quite some time now, we've seen that we first of all, like it was possible early on in 2018. Mm-hmm. And then we got priced out the games, and now I think it's interesting to see that even DeFi is almost getting priced out. So how expensive it is to actually interact with some of these smart contracts. So that's just saying one thing. And then going back to what you said about the security and decentralization, for us, in a sense, the most important thing is of course that there is some kind of security at the base layer. So when you have a sidechain, it's all about like how do you interact with the base layer. If you start to scale up using ZK rollups or similar stuff like that, that is an option. But let's not get too technical about these things quite yet. For now, everyone is kind of just focused on making a solid product, and then kind of the decentralized thing can come a little bit after. So more on the progressive side. So like product first and then decentralization after. At least that's kind of where we ended up. But now that we're kind of more into the technical area of blockchain, talking specifically about NFTs, we've seen a lot of interest around collateralizing NFTs in Axie Infinity, particularly kind of using them in, for example, MakerDAO. Is that something you guys see in the future? Let's kind of extract Axie out of this equation for now, but more in general, like for example, amazing art pictures or that. I believe you guys have a governance process for something like this.
Yeah, so I mean, everything that we adopt into our, so basically at Maker we have the ability to add collateral type to the system. A collateral type will then immediately come into this to basically be able to draw liquidity against it. So right now we have 7 different collateral types. Some of the ones that are worth mentioning is, of course, Ethereum, the biggest one, Wrapped Bitcoin, USDC, Kyber Network, 0x, are some of the things that you can use right now. BAT as well. So basically, right now, if you have Ethereum, you can put it into our smart contracts and you can draw DAI against it. Basically, like in the future, the whole kind of like sentiment and like the direction we're going towards is that we want as much collateral as possible, right? Because the more different collateral types you have, the more diversified the protocol will be, right? And that is really, if you look at it from just like an asset management perspective, one of the first good advice you give to people who starts to invest, that's really, diversification, right? That is really the way that you protect your wealth. So if you look at it from like kind of like what we have in the protocol now, which is mostly very crypto-centric assets, we actually have some NFTs that are moving along in the process. This is a little bit different kind of NFTs. It's invoices represented on the blockchain in an NFT format. So we're already looking at those types of NFTs, like real world assets. And I definitely think that it would be awesome. When the gaming space becomes more mature, you will start to have like for example, you guys at Axie, you probably have one of the most impressive economies already right now, but it's still very small, right? But over time, as these things also start to mature, I don't see a reason why you wouldn't have it. Things are just by nature relatively compatible. However, I think that the risk teams that are going to sit and assess, what is like the risk evaluation of like a mystic Axie, that might be a little bit difficult. But I like the concept. I think it's so cool.
Yeah, I think in general, like the more unique the asset is, it will be more about curation. So both for art and also NFTs, unless you have some guys who are making like some tool to scan the floor, and then they can collateralize based on the floor price without putting too much focus on the various assets itself, rather than just like the underlying. You kind of turn it into more of a fungible asset, and you remove some of it, because like pricing something very uniquely is insanely hard and a skill in itself. Yeah, so let's see. Moving on a little bit from NFTs into more, or going back a little bit to blockchain gaming. I think you touched upon this briefly, but what is the most exciting thing about blockchain gaming for you, and how do you envision the future for blockchain games?
So I think one of the things that I really find super compelling is, I've been, especially when I was younger, I unfortunately don't really have that much time anymore. And I know Aleksander, he's in the same spot as me, but, grew up being a gamer, played video games, shit ton of video games in my teenage years on relatively competitive levels as well. But also in like, MMORPGs like World of Warcraft and so on. One thing which, strikes you very well when you play these games a lot is that like, there's actually a lot of desire to capture the value inside the games, right? People, they trade most of the games, they have economies, whether it's, via like the very established ones, like, the auction house that you have in some games, or if it's, via like the Steam marketplace or something similar, right? I think like the ability to be able to control your own assets, take them outside of the protocol, and actually be able to do other things with them than just have them there and trade them there. I think that's like a very, very strong value proposition. So, with all the hours that people put into these games, I really believe that like the items and like the things that you receive as like rewards for playing, that should be something that should be like, fungible in regards to other assets, right? And I think that, as soon as you can start really, putting, a fair market value on the things that you receive inside the game, I think that just makes it really interesting, and it adds like a completely different element to the game.
Oh, sorry. Did you lag there for a second?
Sorry. Yeah, I think, and then I think another thing is also that you would even be able to take for example, you could create a new game where like Axies, for example, could be compatible. So you could take your Axies and like go into like another game and play with them there. And like, for example, if you release like, let's say that you release like Axie Infinity 2.0 or something, you would just automatically be able to port everything you had over. And I just think there's like so many possibilities in regards to these things here. And then also just, we believe that whenever you put it on the blockchain and you gain access to a lot of these, other services such as decentralized finance, you could imagine that you could have like a mega bank inside of Axie, where you could come and deposit your Axies and, draw liquidity against them if you want to do, certain things inside the game. So all of these things here becomes possible all of a sudden, and you can bank on, what we have seen a lot of the DeFi projects do, and, some of these aggregators as well, where they take a lot of the different services that has been built and then implement them into, a single front end. And, a game could become another front end for these services too.
Yeah, I think you kind of touched on a lot of things there. So to kind of go a little bit deeper into this whole DeFi X gaming, where kind of that where is the common ground here? So for us, I mean, we see that our players are tapping into liquidity from exchanges. They're creating, let's say that they find assets inside our game, and they create liquidity pools on, for example, Uniswap for items themselves as kind of an early experiment. And I think that's incredibly cool to see that you kind of tap into these money Legos from other areas. And that also brings me to my next topic, which is this thing about the yield farming that we've seen in DeFi. And I know this is not tied specifically to MakerDAO, but this whole DeFi area with yield farming, I think it's so incredibly fascinating that the kind of the explosion we've seen in that space, where people are like basically what they're doing, in my opinion, is they are using a service or using a product, whatever that is, and they're being rewarded with a token of that specific from that specific product. Just the fact that this is in a financial type of instrument, which is tied to the revenue streams or the governance. And I think that while that is cool, of course, there are things, I think we briefly talked about it before the stream, where, for example, people aren't incentivized to keep holding this specific token that they get, or the product itself is not diversified enough for people to stick around. To me, it's an incredibly growth strategy. And I think for games, it makes even more sense to actually deliver a token that's tied to the product to the hands of the people who are using it. So I guess I kind of wanted to ask you, in terms of DeFi and gaming, is that exciting to you at all, or what do you think about DeFi yield farming too?
Yeah, so I mean, like DeFi yield farming, it's definitely something that is here to stay. That is very apparent now. In the long run, whether it will actually be successful and whether it can manage to achieve like sticky capital, that's something that we will see over time. But we've definitely seen some very interesting models coming out. I wouldn't say that I'm 100% supportive of all of them, but some of the more interesting ones are like synthetics, and like also what Compound has been doing now, where they basically reward people for supplying liquidity, and they reward people for actually taking out loans, right? So you have these crazy scenarios now on Compound, where you can earn 70%, 80% per year in returns on borrowing, actually, right? They changed something in the governance now, but like there was some days where like if you borrowed from them, you could actually earn potentially like 15 times as much as the loan would cost you. So this of course creates some pretty crazy dynamics. But if we take like that like aside, and some of the great things that goes on in DeFi right now, but look at like the mechanisms themselves, right? And in DeFi, you have this thing where like a lot of the products are relatively generic, right? Whether you use a Compound or Aave, for example, for a lot of people that would be, similar, right? So they go where the best rates are. However, in games, you can actually really, if people have an awesome experience with the game and they also are economically incentivized at the same time, that's like a very different thing, right? Because you're actually playing the game. A lot of what's happening in DeFi is purely financial, right? So people, they have a pure financial interest in it. But for example, if Axie was rewarding their players for playing, doing different things, they could have people who would come in maybe because of the rewards, but would end up sticking around because they love the game. So I think in games, it has like a little bit of a different dynamic. And I think that like the people you get coming in for doing something like that, I believe that will be more sticky than necessarily doing something that you from the get-go in DeFi, no, will be unsustainable, right? Because you can only do it for a limited period of time.
Yeah, I think you're kind of touching on the crux of the matter here, which is about motivation in a sense, right? So what we see in games is that you have basically intrinsic motivation. So you are motivated by that you are trying to have a good feeling, for example, or you want to do certain things in the game. You play because it's fun. You enjoy it, and then you have basically the extrinsic things that you get money. You start actually looking at it more like a job. And I think that's kind of the inherent difference there between yield farming and also what we will see in games, which is just going to be you are actually playing to get a token, which is tied to the governance or to the revenue streams of that game. Once we see people actually start realizing that and utilizing it, and I do hope that actually will be the first there. I think people are starting to open their eyes and really see how like strong this mechanism is for growth. So let's see here. We have also Khan, who has got a new question in the chat. He says he likes what Phantasma are doing with Pavilion Hub, a blockchain that has front end for Steam. I think it was recently covered by Cointelegraph. So for me, I think that Steam, like a decentralized version of Steam, is incredibly powerful, where you, for example, are rewarded in a token to do something. The real problem there is more so like why would these people start using that hub or that platform rather than Steam, for example? And for me, that's all about the products in the end too. So if you have a great product, then maybe you can kind of leverage that into becoming a distributor. So I'm not sure too much about Phantasma and the Pavilion Hub, but I think that could be a hard entry.
Also, just if you look at like historically, a lot of companies that have tried to do things, but like in a decentralized manner, or like using blockchain for things where you don't necessarily need it, hasn't been successful, right? I mean, it's very, very few of like the browsers, the internets, the VPNs, and all of these things here that has been successful yet, right? Just because it's very difficult to onboard people into it initially, and like if they already have really, really good services where they're already getting used, but like I mean, Steam is awesome to use already now, right? Then it's difficult to get like the incentive for people to move over.
Yeah. In the end, like you have to have a just as good service or even better. And at that point, that's when you can actually start competing with these services and start to make people understand why you are special. So I think that's also what we recognize, or you can create something that's totally new, which I guess is kind of what MakerDAO has been doing. But in a sense, it's also a copy from the financial, the traditional finance space. So there are similarities here. I think we're just kind of doing it in a new way, hopefully more efficiently in the future, once kind of this gas cost thing has died down. So I think let's see if we actually passed all of my questions so far, and I think we're at a good time to take some more from the chat. I can see we still have a lot of people in the chat. I think that's great. Unless you kind of have something you want to touch upon specifically for DeFi and games, I think we touched on a lot of things, but you have some kind of final closing statements?
Yeah, so maybe I can ask you a question. So,
sure.
So I mean, we of course like one of the companies that is interacting both with like the more financial aspects of like blockchain and also gaming, for example. But like, how do you guys see the interest from like the rest of the blockchain space and compared to you guys? I mean, it could feel often that like the game is like a little bit of like a niche or like as more separate part of the space. So how do you guys feel like the interaction is with the traditional space, like the traditional blockchain?
Yeah, so I actually think that blockchain gaming is in a very the people who get it, they get it, so to say. And those people are incredibly bullish. They're incredibly looking after everything that's happening. They read all the news. But there's also this feeling of disappointment that we haven't actually gotten farther than we have. And I think that is a lot about the game companies who were founded early on in 2018. Where you kind of had all these really talented maybe engineers, some could do some game development, but the truth is that making a game is incredibly hard. It takes a long time, and then especially also if you're combining all these things, like on the engineering side, where you, for example, have the infrastructure is not ready, and then you also need to combine like really nice game design and incentive design, and these are things that you haven't really ever been done before in the correct way. And then you also need to think about, like, for example, botting. So I think like these are reasons why we haven't seen like a breakout game as of yet, but hopefully we will soon. And I see that there's a lot of interest in the Blockchain Game Alliance, where you see so many people who are joining in. They want to see this happen because everyone agrees on the benefits. Like what is actually like owning your item, owning your identity, like owning your game identity is the start of owning your digital identity, in my opinion. So it's just an easier way for people to understand that. And I think that's kind of really cool to see, and we're going to see more of that happening soon. But in the traditional blockchain, like in the blockchain space, I feel like all the hype is related to DeFi right now. Everyone's kind of just, oh, whatever, blockchain games, it doesn't matter. And then you come as a blockchain game company to the traditional game companies, and they're like, oh, well, whatever, blockchain is just a scam. So it's kind of like being in between, where you have to find the evangelists, you have to find the real people, until you can actually provide a game or a service which is good enough for people to kind of open their eyes. And commonly that's kind of known as the singularity moment, where you have something like Angry Birds, which is really going to probably open the eyes of many people into blockchain games. In the chat, kind of closing out, we have Colin who says you can access blockchain games, Steam games, like 22 Racing, and use NFT as well. That's cool. Maybe I'll have to check that out. I didn't know.
I'm not very familiar with what the Pavilion Pavilion Hub is, so maybe I should probably check that out.
Yeah, for sure. If they aren't members of the BGA, it's time. It's time. Tyler, who is the chief in our Discord, is asking, do you guys think the gas issue will pass anytime soon? Nope. Yeah, so you actually took the answer. Do you have any like definition, or why do you not think so?
Yeah, so I mean, Tyler, the problem really is that you've seen the usage of Ethereum go up. And you've seen, for example, with this yield farming that's going on now, that means that people are doing like very profitable transactions, and they're doing a lot of them because like these like recursive loops that people are doing, it takes a lot of transactions to pull through. So like, and you've seen like the transactions started going up. So like, there's just more activity on the network, but without any scaling necessarily being applied. So therefore, I think that it will only really be solved, when we get to Ethereum 2.0, or if some Ethereum improvement proposal EIP will be submitted that might be able to do something right.
Yeah. Sorry, I thought you were finished.
Oh yeah, I am finished. Just to combine it with whether XDAI would be compatible with ETH 2.0. XDAI is not one of our products. It's a POA, Proof of Authority network that has been doing it. But I assume that they might have plans to do it. It's also like it's a sidechain, right? So it's already like a sidechain where you lock up DAI and then it gets issued on there through these validators they have. So whether you lock up on ETH 1.0 or ETH 2.0, I think that would more or less be the same.
Yeah, I agree. I would just like to kind of point out, like, my personal opinion is that Ethereum will be the foundation for the new decentralized web. I don't see that. I don't see a future right now where the usage will go down. Even when ETH 2.0 goes live, we will see more dApps coming in because people recognize that there's an opportunity here, that there is something that's valuable, that like an immutable store is very interesting, and the same goes for executing smart contracts on a blockchain. So for me, I don't see that happening. So the only thing that we can possibly do is kind of just like scale in other ways, and kind of it's those who need to use smart contracts in any meaningful way. If you are utility based, like for example games, where basically utility means that you need to use your Axie or asset or game asset in some kind of game scenario where you can't afford to pay transaction fees for everything. Then you need to scale in another way. And those who and that basically means that you can sacrifice some of the security of Ethereum, but still sink down in some way. It's not necessarily needed either.
But ETH 2.0 should solve the scalability issues, right? Because it really distributes the network in a very different way, and the consensus is very different. So like when ETH 2.0 releases, it will definitely be cheaper to use. And you could almost say that like the way that like with the shards, the way that they will work is that like a sidechain would just be like like another instance of like something that settles with the mainnet.
Yeah, I think for me, I mean, I believe that when ETH 2.0 goes live, we'll see significant traction there too. So I still believe that the gas cost might be too high. But as you said, like there are different scaling solutions that are coming live, and like obviously we're not engineers, so it will be hard to kind of state specifically yes or no this will happen. So I think that kind of says it for me. We have Ultraism and also Phantasma, a member of the BGA, says, Calm, that's my bad. I actually didn't remember that. Ultraism says that this is the space where crypto will meet real business. I definitely agree. And I think that that's a good way to kind of end it. Thank you guys for hanging out. And thank you too, Gustav, for joining me. Where can people find you if they want to reach out to you?
Yeah, always a pleasure, Aleksander. So I'm on Twitter at @Arentoft, or you can reach out to me, just my name, Gustav Arentoft, on Telegram or LinkedIn.
Great. And I'm Psychout86 on Twitter for those who want to follow me. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you guys for hanging out and talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.